Hello YouTube, and welcome to another episode of modding tutorials, and this is going to be another part of the advanced block series, and it is going to be the fourth tutorial on the furnace, and also a quick shout out to Legit Scopes for the intro. Thanks for that. Right, so moving on, after this else statement that we had, we are going to do the keep inventory equals false. Right, so it says it's a true up here and then false down here. So as I explained in the last one, the keep furnace inventory basically means that when it's true here, when it's swapping the blocks, it will keep the inventory, and when it has swapped the blocks, whenever it's broken ever again, if it's false, then the items will drop. So the next thing we want to do is use our world variable up here, and we want to put dot set block metadata with notify, and then it wants to be the first variable is I, second variable is J, third variable is K, fourth variable it should be set block metadata with notify, not set block and metadata with notify. So basically this is just changing the metadata of that block rather than the whole block itself. So the first three variables are I, J, K, and this variable is our X variable, which is this variable that we defined earlier, and then just put a semicolon on that to end it. Then the next thing we want to do is add an if statement, and within the curly brackets we want to put TE isn't equal to null. So if our tile entity isn't, so basically if it is there, so null basically means nothing. So if our tile entity that we have got from the block that we are using, so to speak, then if there is one, then this if statement will pass, and if there isn't, it won't. So within here we want to put te.validate, and then world.set block tile entity I, J, K, TE. So basically, if we have a tile entity, then it will validate that tile entity and then set the tile entity when our block is set from active to idle or idle to active. So basically when it changes, it will keep our tile entity. That is what we have just wrote. So that is it for that method. Now we need to move on to our next method, which is going to be public tile entity. Sorry, I spelled entity wrong there. Entity. And it is going to be get block entity. And then our two curly brackets. So basically it's a public statement, so superclasses can see it. It will return the type of a tile entity, and the method is called getBlockEntity. And this method is required by the... hang on a sec. Never mind. This method is overwritten in the block class, so we are overwriting the method getBlockEntity in the block class, and it wants to return new tile entity test furnace. So it wants to return our new tile entity that we will be creating in another video. As you can see, we've got an error because we haven't created it, and I'm going to take these to-dos off actually, just because we'll go back through this if we have any errors anyway. Yeah, so that is all is required for that method, and just to check that we have written it right, we want to type @override, and we seem to have an error. I think I've spelled that right. I think. Oh, sorry. What we should have done at the start is this should extend block container. I don't know why I didn't do that. So now, as you can see, if we type @override, we don't get an error because the get block entity is a method of the block container class. So sorry about that one. So the next method we're going to make is public void on block placed by, and this method takes a world variable which we're going to call world. It takes an integer variable which we're going to call I, an integer variable which we're going to call j, and an integer variable called k. And also it takes an integer variable which we are going to call x. Then it takes an entity living variable called el, which is basically who is placing this block. So we've got the world. The first variable that is passed in is the world variable, which is the world in which we are in. The second is the x coordinates of the block. This is the y coordinates, so they're up and down, and this is the z coordinates, so back and forth. And then I believe this is the metadata, but I'm not sure. And then this is who is placing the block. So the first thing we're going to write is we're going to create a new variable called y. So integer y equals math helper dot, not matha helper, math helper dot, we may need to import, no, math helper, thank you, dot floor underscore double, sorry. So this math helper class, blimey, this math helper class is basically just a load of math that's used by it's part of the Minecraft what's it called, engine that it's run on, but this integer y is going to be equal to the math helper class dot floor underscore double, which takes one variable which is a double variable. So we're going to type double in curly brackets to make sure that what we are adding will be a double variable, and it's going to be our el dot rotation yaw times 4f. So basically what this is saying is get the entity that is placing the block, which we made the variable el, get its rotation yaw. So basically that means what its rotation is, what's it called, like which way it's facing, north, south, east, west, times that by 4, so it gets us a decent, what would you call it, a decent continuous variable, so basically a whole-ish number. So it will return 1, 2, 3 or 4 approximately. Then divide that by 360, because that is how many degrees in a full circle, and then add 0.5 d to it. Then finally we type and 3. I'm not quite sure what the and 3 bit does, and I'm not quite sure what the plus 0.5d does, but you don't really need to know that. Basically what it's doing is this y value is equal to either forward, left, behind or right. So north, south, east or west is basically all we need to know. So then we want to do an if statement, and we're going to type if our y variable is equal to 0, then we're going to use our world variable and set block metadata with notify. Oops. IJK two. So basically what this is saying is if our y variable is 0, so let's say 0 is north, then it is going to set our block with the metadata of 2, which if we go back up here, I think basically this is just kind of confusing, but I'm not sure what this does now. PQ lookup. Yeah, anyway, so basically what this is doing is setting our metadata to 2, which in turn will tell us which direction to put it in. Yeah, so if we just copy this statement and paste it another 3 times, so we've got 4 overall, and do this one to 1, this one to 2, and this one to 3, and then we set this to 2, 5, 5, 3, and 4. So this will give us each direction and set each direction. And then the next method is going to be public void on block removal. And this is going to take a world variable called world. Before we move on, let's just check that we've got all this right, which we haven't. On block placed by world Alright, we don't need this x variable, sorry about that. So forget that x, we just need the IJK variables. So this one is going to be world, then integer I, integer j, and integer k. And for this one, before we move on, I'm just going to check that it is correct, which it is. And for this one, we're going to type if keep inventory, although we're going to type if exclamation mark keep inventory. So basically what this means, this exclamation mark here is equivalent of saying equals false, or equals false rather. So basically if our keep inventory variable isn't equal to true, so if it is false, then we're going to make a new variable which is our tal entity new furnace, which we're going to call te equals, then we're going to put our tal entity new furnace world dot get block tal entity IJK. So basically what this is saying is this variable which is a variable of the tile entity new furnace class, which we'll make later, called TE, is equal to world.get the block tile entity of IJK, which is these variables, which will be the block that we are removing, basically, and it's passed to a tile entity new furnace variable, so we don't get any errors.